Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to part 1 of 2 of my 23.0 tier list. You may have noticed that there are some cards missing, and that is very simply because this is going to be a common, rare, epic tier list. I have been asked in the past to do a separate tier list, probably because my main singular tier list is way too long, and now I get to do just 2 videos that are way too long, because that's not going to cut down my time at all, I trust. That just gives me more time to talk about every card as opposed to blowing past like a bunch of cards. But people have asked me that I should separate the tier list, mostly because most people only care about legendaries, and you could understand why. Most legendary cards are the best cards in this game, and because legendaries are so are the best cards in this game, most of the common rares and epics would be relegated to F tier, D tier, C tier if it got talents, like that kind of, like maybe a B tier level card, right? You would see it very, very low in a regular, like, all-encompassing every 68 card tier list, right? But I do think that a lot has been changed with Rush Royale recently. I think that they've added a lot of talents to common rares and epics. They've changed units a lot for common rares and epics, and I think that it's time to give those cards their proper, like, sunshine, to shine a spotlight on cards that I think are very good, even if they are not, necessarily meta. I feel like this might also help new players maybe invest into something if they don't have, level 15 cards, if they don't have legendaries that are like, level 13, level 15, level 12s, level 11s, high tier legendary cards, they can invest in some of these S plus cards, and those cards will also be very good as well. None of these cards will be good on their own. You will need legendary cards. That's not to say that you can make a deck with these cards. Harlequin and Dryad are both cards that you will probably always need for most of your play, and they've already made that easier to obtain as well by giving it to you in the shop for 6 runes, I believe, runes. Either 6 runes or 6 crystals. I forget what it is. I think it's 6 runes, that you can save over the course of, a couple of months. And you can get 2 of the cards that you will use in pretty much your every deck. Those are probably 2 of the most prevalent, base legendary cards that you need, that don't need to be leveled up for them to be good. And you will probably need those if you were to make any of these decks. But with that being said, I did leave this on the screen for a while so that you can screenshot this if you want. I didn't want to blow past this. So without further ado, let's get into this. I'm going to start at the bottom here. You know what? I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to start at the top because as I talk about attack unit cards, it's going to make more sense if I go from the top to the bottom as opposed to if I go from the bottom to the top. Because if I go from the bottom to the top, I'll talk about a card and then have to talk about a card in the upper tier in order to be like, oh, the reason why this is down here, it's because of this card up here. If I go from the top, you'll understand why the cards that are at the bottom are at the bottom. So first off, in every single category, I have, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5 categories. I only have 1 F tier, and everything else beyond F tier I think is kind of fine. It's not the best, but I think that it's like a B tier card. It's kind of okay, but it's not that big of a jump, like where I think it's also bad. F tier is literally just F tier. Like, do not use these cards. And then S plus tier, some of these cards have transferred into the meta. Some of them into the meta in a major way, and some of them into the meta in a like a mid tier kind of way. Like if you don't have a level 15 knight statue, you might use a grindstone. If you don't have like a level 15 trapper, you might use a level 15 chemist, right? There are obvious legendary upgrades to a lot of these cards, but this tier list, I tried to pretend like you don't have legendary cards, and if you are questioning why Clown is so high, I'll get into that. But that is something to keep in mind. Also keep in mind these are all my thoughts. If you think something is wrong, please let me know in the comments and tell me how wrong this entire list is. I love reading those. I love having a back and forth with somebody who thinks that I'm completely wrong, and inevitably there will always be somebody who thinks I am completely wrong about everything, or about one thing, or about some things. But yeah, let me know in the comments. It helps my engagement, and I'll go back and forth with you and increase my comment count on this video, which is also something I love to do. But here we go. Portal Keeper with a bullet is my pick for S+ top tier card. Until you get a mermaid that is a level 5, you will probably die to negative effects. Negative effects are, I cannot say this enough, negative effects are running this game. Once you start going into double bosses, triple bosses, you will start encountering more and more problematic things, like a King Pudding, like a Dark Priest. And if you cannot get rid of these negative effects, you will just die. If you build up an entire field, and then all of a sudden you get King Puddinged, you die the next round. And if you can't get rid of the negative effect, if you play against a shaman player, if you play against a witch player, most players dislike those two cards specifically because they have no way of getting rid of negative effects. Most units at common, rare, and epic do not have efficient ways of getting rid of their own negative effect. In the way that like a Light Inquisitor can use Purification, or a Spirit Master has its Cleanse, or some cards are now getting prevent cleanses with a 30% chance if it gets negative affected, and even those are better than having nothing. Demon Hunter is one of them, Riding Hood is another one. But most common, rare, epic units don't have ways to self-cleanse, and at which point Portal Keeper is going to save you a lot. It's going to help you win games. It is going to help you get things into place, get things into the right spot. If you're using magic amulet tiles, growth tiles, a Portal Keeper is going to help you get things into those spots quicker so that you can start building those cards up faster. It is also going to save you theoretically from a warlock. It used to be where if you moved a unit with Portal Keeper, both units would get a shield, at which point both of the units could be not affected by negative effects. But now it's just the Portal Keeper is the one that gets a shield. So if you are running it, and if a unit that is not Portal Keeper gets warlocked, you can switch it. The Portal Keeper will get defended. It will not die, and then your unit will be saved. And so even the one-sided shield on Portal Keeper is still pretty good. It is just an overall, like, very, very strong unit that I don't think a lot of people take into account. And in a Rush Royale universe where there are so many negative effects, Portal Keeper is going to also get rid of any negative effect as well. It's going to cleanse every single unit. It is going to be able to move and protect units. It's going to move things into place. There are so many uses, and this is all without talents. The fact that Portal Keeper doesn't have talents, and yet it can do all of these things, which would be regular talents on other cards, right? Because Portal Keeper, all it needs to do is just move a unit. It doesn't need to cleanse. It doesn't need to shield. It doesn't need to do any of these things, and it does. And because it does, It's my pick and will always and forever be my pick for S plus. Even especially in a common rare epic tier list. Sharpshooter, they have changed, but the one thing that has remained the same forever is the stun shot. The stun shot is the reason why you use Sharpshooter. It is in meta decks. It drifts off and then comes back and then drifts off and comes back, but it is one of the meta support cards that can end games. Once you start going into double bosses and triple bosses and you are able to kill your boss quicker than they can, and then stun their field, it's crazy. They did nerf it a little bit, to where, you only get an extra shot every 2 upgrades. But even with that, as long as you have a reasonable amount of sharpshooters at a reasonable high level, it's still going to be good. And being able to stun their board during the wave and during bosses is very strong. The fact that it has been able to push into the actual regular meta, and go into Inquisitor decks or decks that don't have a lot of units, is another reason why it will be an S plus common rare epic. Grindstone, we all know it. Boreas Grindstone is the peanut butter and jelly of this game. As soon as they came out with Grindstone, everybody was like rejoicing. All those Boreas players were rejoicing. Grindstone is one of the best equipment, or I think they're called buildings. It's one of the best buildings. Night Statue is obviously the best building, but Grindstone is probably a close second. The fact that it has the ability to attack and get more, gain more charges, anything that can gain charges over the course of a game, in a game where all of your monsters' health increase over the course of the game, Grindstone has the ability to quote unquote infinitely increase. And so it can gain more and more power over the course of the game. And that is one of the reasons why it's good. The versatility of being able to be a unit that can slot into any unit, that has very high attack is also very strong. Jay being one of the best heroes in the game, as long as you have like a level 10 J, even a level 5 J with the tiles, it's a 40% quicker tile. You're getting 4 tiles on the board that give you 40% speed. Put almost any unit on that, put it next to a Grindstone, you're good to go. There are units that are better than others, but even that is a strong enough deck in and of itself, and that's all thanks to Grindstone. Because it is a damage unit, you will have to protect it, so it's just another unit that you're going to have to protect. But if you can protect it with a Portal Keeper or a level 5 Mermaid, it's very strong. You guys might be confused by me having Clown so high up, because Harley Quinn is just the infinite better version of Clown. But assuming that you don't have a Harley Quinn, but you're an early game player and you got Clown, Clown is going to be the card that you choose to use. It just is. Being able to copy a unit and then presumably move it with a Portal Keeper, it takes away the debuff. Even if it disappears and you get some amount of mana back, I think that that's still fine, and that's something that you're still going to be willing to do. I think that if you are running an Engineer deck and you get Clown and Portal Keeper, you're going to run Clown. Assuming that, obviously, that you don't have Harley Quinn, you're probably still going to run Clown. The fact that it can disappear is not really its downfall if that's all you have, because the times that it will actively become the unit, it's going to be good enough. I don't think it's obviously not good if you have Harley Quinn. You're just going to forever use Harley Quinn and never use Clown again. But I think in a world where you don't have Harley Quinn, and you are very early in this game, That's how good this unit is. It is this good. I wanted to do all of the universal units will always come at the top of my tier lists because you can use those in any deck that you make, as opposed to very specific attack units that you have to build around. Because if you use attack units, you're probably going to use all of those other support units, at which point all of those other support units are much more important than whatever is the best attacking unit. And what is the best attacking unit? Let's all say it together: Shinobi. Shinobi is the best common rare epic attack unit. You might fight me and say Crystalmancer High Arcanist is. I think Shinobi, even though you only get it at the rate of 15%, I think that if you have a field of Shinobis that you can easily theoretically get over the course of the game, and you just build up a field of Shinobis on a J tile next to a grindstone, it's very strong. It is incredibly strong. The fact that they made it even better with the Vigor Bomb affecting the entire field and giving double bonuses to Shinobi. I loved Shinobi before they decided to buff Shinobi. And then they decided to buff Shinobi. If you haven't tried it, if you haven't seen it, I have a video. I have multiple videos on Rogue. If you want me to link you, I can. Just type it in the comments. But if you want to see like how good Shinobi is, let me know. I think a very close second is High Arcanist Crystalmancer. High Arcanist, they did buff as well. And so if you have more than 500 charges, which actually isn't very difficult to get, it is very strong. I think that it's also relatively easy to create. And if you have a level 15 Crystalmancer, it's even getting free upgrades, which will then eventually free upgrade the rest of your board. There's an argument that Crystalmancer is better than Shinobi, but I have a soft spot for Shinobi, and I don't like the only knock that I have against High Arcanist is the 3-second delay on its attack. If it didn't have that, it would be too good. And that's why I understand that it has it. But the damage capacity that you can do, the crit percentages that you can get to is crazy on a High Arcanist. I wouldn't use the other one. I've already forgotten what the other side is called. Don't use it. Just use a High Arcanist, build it up, use a growth tile. It's really strong. It's very good. I think that Alchemist is also a very strong deck. Obviously the Golem side. If you want to see how good the Alchemist truly is, I have a couple of videos on my channel. It's Royal Trial Battles. The Golem ability is a finishing move. You can screw over so many players. If you see them even kind of struggling with the wave and you send them golems on their next boss, as long as it's a problematic boss, I'm talking not a tamer, not a tribunal, if it is anything else, if it is a king pudding, especially a bedlam, if it is a bedlam, a warlock, an assassin, a dark priest, any problematic boss, if they're struggling with the wave and you have Alchemist, you will kill them. You can send so many golems to their side that they have to kill before they kill the boss, and the boss will just keep hitting them over and over and over. It is a finishing move if their entire field is Gorgoned. It's very strong. I think these three are the top damage dealers and finishing move units in the common rare epics. I think that Reaper with the updates is also very strong. I have a video, a character spotlight on Reaper on why I think it's very good. the fact that that they took it from just being a support unit to being an active DPS unit is crazy. The fact that it does both is crazy. The fact that it can be a support unit and insta-kill monsters for you while your DPS unit, maybe a High Arcanist, kills the bosses is very strong as well. I do think that you need a lot of Reapers to make Reaper DPS work. You probably also need a Knight statue, like at a reasonably high level. I don't think it has a high enough attack speed for Grindstone. But I do think that if under the right conditions, I think that Reapers is very strong. The fact that it can send a lot of ghosts to their field, that can overwhelm them is very strong. The fact that it's not very difficult to get stacks and to gain more and more damage is also very strong. I think that Reaper is probably the last DPS unit that is a very good common rare epic S plus DPS unit, but I also think that it's still very strong. Chemist I put at the bottom. There's not a lot of people that use Chemist anymore. Most people use Trapper. But I do think that Chemist is good. The reason why it's at the bottom and not higher at the top, if you have multiple Chemists on the field, it is much worse. So if you didn't know, the way that Chemist works is an enemy unit can only be Chemist once. So if you have a 1, 2, 3, 4 Chemist on the field and your level 1 hits a unit, that is the debuff. If the level 2 hits it, that's not the debuff. It is only debuffed by the level 1. And so that percentage of debuff, that's it. Which means that you have to have your goal is to either have all the same level so that it doesn't matter, or just one Chemist. If you're only running commons, rares, and epics, and you don't have a scrapper, and you don't have multiple ways of getting rid of a Chemist, it can be very difficult. You could have yourself a 3 and a 4 and a 5 Chemist, and you have to hope that the 3 or the 4 don't hit the enemy units, because then that would be the debuff. And you have to hope that your 5 is fast enough. For this reason, a lot of the time I like to use Portal Keeper, and I like having it in the first slot. I like putting the Portal or the Chemist that I'm leveling up in the very first bottom left corner, because it is the closest to the enemy units as they come out of the gate, at which point there is no delay time. Theoretically, if you have a level 3 closer to the gate than your level 1 is, like maybe your level 1 is all the way on the right side, the level 1 is going to have a much slower time getting spitting all the way to the corner. There is a delay time. And because of that delay time, it is possible that you can have the strategy of having your leveled up ones closer to the bottom left corner, because then they have a higher chance of hitting the monsters first, just as an extra added strategy if you have multiples on the field. Cold Elemental has gotten much better. It does need other things to make it work, but I think that the crystal damage that it does when there are monsters that are under control effects, I think it is very strong. I don't think it's the best. I just did a character spotlight for Cold Elemental. I don't think it is the best. It is a very good damage unit. It doesn't have scalability though, and that's why it's at the bottom of S+, but the fact that it can do damage, can do like a reasonable amount of damage, and 3, it slows the field, so you could theoretically win that way as well, if you are matching your opponent's damage, and you're both gonna die, your field being slowed by Cold Elemental, and whatever secondary card you are using to control the field so that your Cold Elemental is better, I think that it has the potential to be pretty good. Portal Mage, I struggled to figure out where to place it. I do want it. I did want to place it in S plus because there is a singular deck in the meta currently that I will talk about when I go into legendaries. There is a specific deck that is using Portal Mage, and it is the best deck. Again, I'm going to go into that when I go into legendaries. But yeah, that's why it's an S plus. It's not an S plus for any other reason. I think if you put it in most decks, you're not even going to notice a difference. But it is very strong in one deck that is the best deck. And I'll go into that when I talk about legendaries. But to move on to S tier, I think these are all very good cards. I just don't think they're as essential as the other cards. I think that Banner, if you don't have a Knight statue, I think Banner is a perfectly fine card to build around, especially again because J gives you tiles, 40% attack speed tiles. If you have a Banner, if you don't have a Grindstone is obviously better. Knight statue is better. But if you don't have either of those and you have Banner, I think Banner next to a J tile is very, very strong. I feel like there were some decks in the meta that used to use this because Knight statue doesn't work well with Enchant Sword, and so people were using Banner and Enchant so that they could use Enchant Sword. They have since moved off from that, and they're starting to use Witch, and that's why Banner has dropped off the map. But I do think that if you don't have all of those cards, all of those, the best of the best support cards, I think that Banner is fine. The fact that it only does attack speed is its problem, and whenever it gets talents, it's probably going to be much better, and it might even move into S plus. I do think that Vampire is very strong for two separate reasons. One is the Vampire Bite, where you bite down a creature so that their level goes down. This allows you to get better merges. You can put a vampire into a deck and have it act like a pseudo Dryad. What I mean by that, if you don't have Dryad and you put Vampire in your deck and you just have a straight merge deck, you can just keep biting down creatures, your own creatures, to merge to become something else and use it kind of like a summoner, but you're also kind of using it like a Dryad in the sense that if you really don't like something, you can bite it all the way down, kill it, and then summon in a new card. And you can keep doing this until you get what you want at the levels that you want it. I think that is a very strong reason to use Vampire. And the other reason, the level 15 ability can be used as a finisher. The white that a Lord Vampire summons in front of the pack. So if there is a boss that they are going to get hit by, and you have a Lord on the field, bite literally anything, and they will die, because the white that gets summoned on their field goes in front of whatever is the most whatever the front is. So if they're gonna get hit by a boss and you summon a white, the white will hit them, and then the boss will immediately hit them and they die, because that's 1 heart and then 2 hearts. The same goes for a mini boss. And the fact that they made it to where it appears in front of the pack is crazy. It is the best ability. Finishing somebody off with a vampire is the funniest, most satisfying thing. It's very great. I think that Mime is also very strong. It feels like a worse version of a vampire, although I do see its uses. Again, if you don't have Harley Quinn, this is going to be the thing to use in order to get rid of cards. Like we're going to talk about Engineer, but if you are, building an Engineer deck, you're going to use Mime. I do think Vampire is better in that deck, but if you don't have a high level Vampire, I think that a Mime can work as well. There's not really much to say about it. You know how it works. It has the one ability and it does it great. I'm very interested to seeing what they do if Mime gets talents. Because I think that could become, that's another card that could become an S plus card. 1 second. Engineer is a bygone era of the first round of talents. Engineer came out when they first introduced talents, and they haven't updated it since. And because of that, I feel like even though it's still good, it's not as good as some of these other ones, like a Rogue, like a Crystalmancer, like a Reaper. I feel like it used to be like at the time, it was probably like an S plus. And I think it's still a very good deck to build around, especially for the level 15 talent that allows you to upgrade, that allows itself to upgrade, over the course of the game. I think it has very good talents, but I don't think the talents scale as well as other units that are in here. I think that a Rogue is going to shoot faster and do everything that a Engineer is trying to do much more efficiently. Reaper has the ability to insta-kill things. You are doing straight damage with Engineer, and if you don't have a level 5 Mermaid, it's very hard to pull off because you have to choose from either having better attack speed during boss rounds or shielding yourself from negative effects. And the shields are very temporary because you don't know what is going to get a shield. You also if your opponent is running a shaman or a witch or something, it doesn't protect itself very well, is what I'm trying to say. But if you go for protection, then you're sacrificing attack speed, where maybe you won't kill the boss fast enough. It just has a couple of different separated problems, so that if you try to fix a problem, you obtain a new problem. And if they updated the talents like they have for Priestess or Reaper, I think that it can be an S plus card. But for now, I think it's still a good card to build around, simply because it is a deck. When you're using common, rare, and epics, and you're going up against other players, most players don't build decks. They just put good cards together. So that's why you'll see like the Boreas Blade Dancer Cultist deck, right? Just a deck that has like a bunch of legendaries at level 7 and they're all DPS legendaries. And that's not how you build a deck. You build a deck where you have one DPS card, one card that is doing damage, and you build around that card. Engineer is still that. And I still think for that reason, it is a better card. It is still an S tier card. I just don't think that it's as good as some of the S plus damage dealers. Hunter, I feel the same way about. The fact that it has a level up ability is very strong. They changed it a little bit, and I still think that it's still very good. The fact that they gave it a increase in damage over the course of the game is also very strong. But the one thing that I don't like about it, that I like Engineer more for, is the fact that it attacks very strong in the very beginning of the game, but as the game progresses and monsters get much more they have much more health, it's going to switch targets. At which point, if you didn't kill the front monster and you've now switched targets to the second monster, that front monster is still going to kill you. And so it's up to your other units to kill it. And that is the one knock on it. It has very strong attack, but it switches targets. And because of that, it's going to eventually drop off. And as a DPS unit, it makes you almost feel like you need a second DPS unit. And for that reason, I don't like it. And I think that it's that much worse than an Engineer that will always attack the front target. I think that Executioner is very strong as a support card. It's obviously not as good as the support cards in S+, but I do think that being able to finish off a high health monster is going to be very strong. The fact that it will happen is very good. I think Executioner has solid damage, and if it gets talents, I could see it moving into S+. It's that strong. Gargoyle, I think, is very good. But I also think that if you don't have a Dryad, it is not great. You need to build a T setup so that you have your Stone Gargoyle in the middle, and then you have the four gargoyles around it. But you can't just merge, and that's my problem with it in this context, in a common rare epic context. You need a Dryad to make this work. But if you have it, I think that it's very strong. The fact that it has its own knight statue, like the stone gargoyle itself, is it gives it additional attack damage. Does it do attack speed as well? I feel like it does attack speed and attack damage, but it could just be damage. But the fact that the Stone Gargoyle acts as your building, and you don't have to have an additional building, you don't have to have an additional grindstone or an additional knight statue or an additional banner in order to make your card stronger. It makes itself stronger, means that you can add other cards. It gives you more flexibility because it already fixed one of your problems. I'm just going to look this up really quick. It grants an area attack to neighboring. It grants area attack. The damage inflicted by the attack will depend on the stone merge rank. And it's also invulnerable to negative effects, which is also a positive. The fact that it can never be negative affected is very strong. If a warlock happens to target the stone gargoyle, it won't get destroyed. Or an assassin, or a shaman. There are infinite shamans that they have. If it hits the stone gargoyle, nothing happens. It's also very strong for that. When you have a knight statue or a banner or a grindstone that you are upgrading, it is so disheartening for you to upgrade, like a knight statue to level 4, only for it to get shamaned, or only for it to get tribunaled, or red guide. The stone gargoyle will never get affected by anything, ever. And that is a huge positive. So I think it's good. But also the fact that you could have like multiple stone gargoyles and have to merge them out, and then theoretically maybe get another like leveled up stone gargoyle and just have another useless field thing on the field is one of its drawbacks. But I do think that it's still an S tier card, and that's why it's still an S. We're now moving down a rank into cards that I think are starting to get a little bit worse. Zealot. I love Zealot. I can't tell you how much I love Zealot, and I want Zealot to be good. Zealot is awful. The setup for Zealot is insane. The fact that the talent makes you use Cauldron is insane. The X setup that you have to build for it to even kind of be okay is so difficult to build. Even with all of the cards, even with the best cards. And then the fact that it forces you to not use your mana in a game where using your mana makes you more powerful. The more mana that you're using, your board is getting better and better. But Zealot forces you to not use your mana to make your board better. So if you want to make your board better, Zealot becomes worse. Also, Zealot has no attack speed. The attack speed on a Zealot is so low that if you don't have at least like a level 3, level 4 Zealot, you're attacking just so slow. And all of these factors just make it just really bad. And the only reason why it's at the top of A, beyond these other cards is because the potential for damage is very high. If you save a lot of mana, you can potentially do a lot of damage, but it's very risky to try to get there. And you need to protect it with like a level 5 mermaid, and you need Dryad, in order to level stuff up, and you need Scrapper. You need so many things, in order to make a Zealot deck work. So many legendary things. But if you have all of those things, it's kind of okay. It's not going to be better than, an S plus card. Like, I would use Rogue over this. I would use Crystalmancer over this. I would even use an Alchemist DPS deck over this. I would for sure use a Reaper deck over this. I think that it's fine in the sense that this is the last good attacking card that you should even consider using. But it's very difficult. Pyrotechnic, I just did a character spotlight for Pyrotechnic. I think it is, of the units that are DPS units that do not have talents, I think this is the last good one. And by good one, I don't mean great. I mean kind of okay. It's very difficult to use. You have to have a specific number on the field. I believe it always has to be an odd number. And if you have an even number of pyrotechnics, it becomes much, much worse. It also has no talents, so it doesn't have increasing damage. So whatever damage you have, that is it. You can give it more attack speed by merging it up. But it has no increase in, attack damage. I don't know if it attacks fast enough to be able to use with Grindstone. I think there are faster units that are much easier to use with Grindstone. I think that it's fine. But I would not recommend it. I do think that Bombardier is better, than Catapult, even though they've changed Catapult. They changed Catapult to where as you merge rank it up, it becomes quicker and quicker and quicker. Bombardier is always instant. Bombardier, even though it doesn't do as much damage as a Catapult, you don't have to level it up for it to become more effective, in stunning things or attacking. It is always attacking. It is always stunning. And the only, like, the big knock on it is obviously it doesn't stun bosses anymore. But they have promised that it's going to get talents at some point, and that's probably going to be the level 15 talent. And it's gonna be able to stun bosses again. But the fact that it stuns, I think it's the best stunner, in the common, rare, and epics, followed by a Catapult. Catapult has such high damage, and if you can merge rank it up, it can be a little bit better than a Bombardier. I just think Bombardier is much easier to use, because you don't have to level it up. Lightning Mage has a lot of specific uses. Again, in Royal Trials, it's one of the best decks under a J. If you build a J deck with Banner and Lightning Mage, I think there's a potential there. If you have a level 10 or a higher J, it has one of the fastest attacks in this game, and it always attacks 3 units. Asking you if you have Necromancer tiles is probably a no, but I do remember a time when people were putting this on Necromancer tiles, and it was just murdering everything. And that was a thing. Cold Mage, they've changed in this patch. I don't think it's that much better than it used to be. I still think it's fine. The one ability that has the ability to kill, is it Cracking Ice? The Cracking Ice ability sounds like a really good ability, where if their health is below 30%, they take 20% more damage. That sounds like a good ability, but they already have to be almost dead, and then you just kill them anyway. Being at 30% or less health, I would rather just use an Executioner at that point to just auto kill it, right? Executioner at max level, that's why Executioner is so high. The health for an Executioner at level 15 is 40%. They could have 40% health, and an Executioner will insta-kill it. As opposed to, if they have 30% or less, they now take 20% more damage. It's a talent that sounds good, and in practice, it's not great. Flash of Frost is fine. Fierce Cold just makes the thing that it does better. And again, Frozen, the Deadly Cold, that they auto die if they're less than 5%. Again, it's something that sounds good, and in practice, it's not great. And for that reason, I think that it's still fine. It's still a card that you might use because of the freezing capabilities, and because it's a unit that has talents. I'm just saying, don't think that those talents are the best things. I think an Executioner does the job more efficiently. If you were to max out a Cold Mage or max out an Executioner, I would say max out the Executioner. The one thing that I will say about Magic Cauldron, the ability to randomly level up things, is its strongest ability. The fact that it also deals damage and can help you in your early waves, so that it's not just a useless card on the field in the early waves if you happen to manage to just draw Cauldrons, I think is very strong as well. Mana isn't that important in this game, for the very simple reason that the only reason why you ever feel like you need to add things that give you mana into your deck, it's because you don't have enough damage to kill things. Your problem is not, I need more mana. Your problem is, I need cards that deal damage. You only feel like you need mana because everything that you summon in isn't killing the waves. And so you feel like if you have more mana, you can summon in more things. If you had one unit that dealt 1 million damage every second, you wouldn't feel like you need mana, because you could kill everything. And so adding in a Cauldron, adding in a Vampire for mana, adding in Priestess for mana, these are not solutions. And so the reason why you should be using Cauldron, if at all, is 1, because you're running a Zealot deck because you're being forced to, or 2, because you want to use the level 15 ability, which is the random level up ability. I think that it's a fine ability. It's not the best. I think that it's going to be more so a useless card in your deck, more oftentimes than not, because having, it's also counterintuitive. And what I mean by that is, if you only had one Cauldron on your field, you're not going to get the level up ability very often. If you have multiple Cauldrons on your field, it's possible that it randomly levels up another Cauldron and not the units that you want it to land on. It's also random. And so it could level up something like a support card. It could level up your Mime as opposed to your Engineer. It's the best reason to use Cauldron, and even at that, it's not a good reason. And then the bottom of A is going to be Earth Elemental. I think that it's a support card in some decks, and I do like the fact that it has the ability, as it levels up, to throw more things. So at level 1, it throws 1 thing. At level 2, it throws 2 things. At level 3, it throws 3 things. I think that that's fun. I like that it does splash damage. If you have a Banshee, it's good in the Banshee deck. But not really anything else. There's not really anything else that uses poison damage. A Vampire has poison damage, but I don't think it deals enough damage for that poison damage to matter. I think it's a fine card. You can use it in like an Alchemist deck. But I think outside of that, outside of being that kind of support card, I don't think that you're going to use it. Moving on to B, I can probably speed through this. Priestess has been given incremental damage over the course of time with one of its abilities. I can't remember offhand what it's called. The Sisters in Faith ability. Every time you use the main ability, it also summons, it gives you candle stacks that increase damage by 16.5% per candle. The bonus decreases to 1% after 100 candles. It's strong. I think that it's very strong. I think that they made it such a strong ability because you have to sacrifice priestesses. You have to summon in 2 priestesses and then sacrifice them, and then your other priestesses on the field will get stronger. The problem with this is that, one, it costs a lot to summon in, and that number keeps increasing over the course of the game. And 2, you do have to leave a couple of priestesses on the field, and if you keep summoning them, or if you keep merging them out, that can become a problem. Because if you don't have enough priestesses on the field to deal damage, and you keep merging them out so that they get stronger, it's a weird counterintuitive play. If you have Dryad in your deck, if you have Harley Quinn, it's going to make this easier because you can build up like a couple of priestesses on a tile, and then merge them and then merge out other priestesses, and then hope to get Dryad so that you can level up the ones that are on tiles, and you can play it that way. But I think that it's very difficult. I think the Holy Water ability is very strong. Morning Prayer is the one that you're going to use, and then the Bolstered Faith is fine. Getting the extra attack speed is always a good thing. But I just think that it's very narrow and it's very difficult to use. And that's why it's in B. Wind Archer and Sentry are basically interchangeable to me. I don't think one is better than the other. I think they're both kind of okay. Thunderer, they did change. I don't think it's that much more powerful than it used to be. I do think that it's better than an F tier card, because it has the ability to stun and because it has the ability to attack more than one thing. So that's kind of like area of effect damage. And so that's fine. Ivy, I don't think is great. I think it's great in the first 2 rounds. It has the ability to, on its own, kill the entire wave. It can just like shoot a thing and then the entire wave explodes. And for the first maybe 3 rounds, it's good. And then after that, you can't build a deck around it. I've tried doing it. I've tried seeing like if you had like a level 7 Ivy and a Night Statue, like could you just like, poison, and deal so much like continuous poison damage to something like a really, like high level boss or something, and have it just murder the entire wave, in double bosses and no, it doesn't. It gets much worse after round 3. It's very bad. For that reason, I think it's still better than an F tier card. Because F tier cards are just plain useless, but I do think that it drops off very quickly. And in terms of F tier cards, Plague Doctor is at the top of my F tier card. It still has area of effect damage, but that is going to drop off very quickly, much more quickly than even Ivy. Fire Mage does a little bit more than the regular damage of an Archer. Thrower is very bad because it attacks randomly, but they did give it the effect of if it deals damage to the same thing, it does bonus damage, which gives it a slight edge over Poisoner, who, if it poisons the first thing, it then moves on to the second thing. So even if the first thing isn't dead, I'm not going to attack that anymore. It's terrible. It's probably the worst card in this game. Trying Try it out. Make a deck. But yeah, that is going to be all of the commons, rares, and epics. And stay tuned for part 2, where I talk about